Hello, Dodgers fans, and the Dodgers fall tonight 6-4 to those pesky Rays, and with a hell of an outing by Blake Snell, as we talked about last night, Juan, and again it's your boys Juan y Alonso here on the Dodgers Beat After the Game show. So if you're joining us, please chime in tonight. We got Twitter, we have YouTube, we have Twitter, we have all the platforms. But please send us over any comments and chime in on anything we're going to talk about tonight. But a tough loss. But as we talked about last night, Juan, these Rays pitchers, they're good. And in Blake Snell, we knew that he was going to be a little bit of a challenge and a little bit of a cookie to break, if you will. And now we're here on the losing end of that. But how are you feeling tonight after that loss?
I'm not feeling good. It was a tough loss. I mean, it was just disappointing, and it was also just an eye-opening experience because we got their main guys tonight. We saw their heavy hitters tonight, and we really didn't do much against them. And so we're going to see a lot of this for the rest of the series. So, it's coming off of the high of yesterday. You're trying not to get too high, trying not to get too low, but there's a lot of Dustin May slander out there that I saw, a lot of Dave Roberts slander. I'm looking forward to getting into it tonight.
And Brandon Lau, not Lowe, Lau, with a huge day today. Obviously getting everything going for them, and just with he had himself a 3 RBI game, and 2 hits out there, 1 strikeout. But I mean, he had himself a good game on that side. And Choi, the Tampa Bay Rays panda, if you will, going out there and having himself a game too. But I mean, they manufactured runs. They were doing kind of what the Dodgers didn't do today, as opposed to last night. And to your point, I think there's a lot of fans that maybe were riding the high a little too high, if you will, in my opinion. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I myself am a Dodger fan as well, right? But at the same time, knowing baseball, you kind of have to look at the optics of what's in front of you. Blake Snell's a bad dude. Like I said on this show last night, one of the dudes that I thought that the Dodgers should have aggressively gone after that offseason that he was available was Blake Snell. And tonight is proof why. He has electric stuff. He was kind of firing on all cylinders, had a pretty frugal pitch count as well tonight. All things considered, he went out on 88 pitches with 49 of those going for strikes. That's a pretty efficient outing and 4.2 innings. And, they were able to contain those Dodgers hitters. Obviously, later in the game, they were starting to get some stuff going. They had some guys on base, but ultimately that was kind of the downfall of the Dodgers as well, is they left guys on base. They'd get 2 on, but they'd leave 2 on as well. So it was a little bit of a difference from yesterday to today. And a huge thing that they were struggling with was the strikeout. They had 15 strikeouts today. So, obviously those things are gonna prevent these guys from kind of getting everything going. Dustin May, though, I talked about it when he made his previous appearance. It doesn't look like he trusts his stuff. He doesn't look comfortable. Obviously, you feel bad for the kid because, as you saw at the end of the game, or not at the end of the game, at the end of his outing, rather, he's sitting in the dugout with both hands on his head, just palm facing. And, it just wasn't there for him or for Tony. And here we are. So I'm kind of curious, obviously Dustin gave up that bomb, and you can't throw a slider and let it hang there because that's what's going to happen with professional hitters. But I'm kind of curious to hear your take on the bullpen usage tonight.
Well, I mean, I'm concerned because do you remember? It doesn't seem like it was that long ago that we thought, hey, Dustin May, bring him in to close the games. Dustin May should be our closer. Dustin May has not looked well in the NLCS, and he doesn't look well in the World Series. He was tagged with 3 runs today, and those 3 runs ended up being the difference in the game. But I just want to preface this by just saying, the Rays are here for a reason. After listening to the radio all day today, you had guys like Kevin Kennedy saying that the Rays just don't match up with the Dodgers. Bill Plaschke saying it's going to be a sweep in the LA Times. I mean, the level of disrespect that was thrown at the Rays today was, I think, a little comeuppance to the world. I mean, these guys, as I said, are here for a reason. Perhaps their numbers aren't as good as any other team. I think Jeff Passan said that it's the worst offensive team to make it to a World Series. But hey, all of a sudden, Lau, who's been struggling the whole postseason, hits 2 home runs tonight. The Rays found ways to score runs. For a team that struggles to score runs, it was a little disconcerting to see that they put 6 runs on us. So I want to give credit to the Rays because Snell was fantastic for those, 5 innings that we were getting no hit again, which is another disturbing trend. We were getting no hit for 5 innings against the Padres. So it just seems that our offense is just sometimes, it's all or nothing. So I want to give all the credit to the Rays because they showed up. This was a must win for them. We talked about it last night that if this was a game that the Dodgers could steal, it would be great, knowing that it was a bullpen game. That being said, Dylan Floro bounced back really nicely today. So I was very surprised to see him come in the second inning. I was just like, wow, we're going straight to Floro already in the second inning. So it was nice, but I just think the issue is we could not limit the damage. And that's the difference in the game. Whenever we tried scoring, the Rays bullpen limited to 1 run. They limited the damage. The Dodgers, Alex Wood was good, but unfortunately it was that middle inning there with Dustin May that ended up being the difference in the game. And I don't want to be that guy that wants to put the blame on just one person, because there was also some defensive plays. The defense was lackluster today that contributed to the Rays scoring runs. But for me, this is what happens. The only thing I will say is this. I am glad they didn't use Urias today, because I think now the fact that we don't have 3 legitimate starters, I think, is starting to show up here. We might get exposed. I mean, they have definitely 3 different starters. So hopefully not using Urias. That means we can use Urias in Game 4, because this idea of bullpen games, it's making me nervous. The Rays look like they have one coming up in Game 4, so hopefully we can take advantage of that. Thank you, Voice in the Sky.
And if you recall, I had predicted that's what would happen, and here we are. So I will take 1 point for that. Just for those of you that don't know, because you don't, between the 3 of us, Voice in the Sky, myself and Juan, we give each other points. That's 1 for Alonso. It's what's interesting is I'm sure to a certain degree some people have heard the commentary coming from me as almost kind of overselling the Rays. I'm not overselling the Rays by any stretch. It's just looking at it from a baseball guy as far as, my background and analyzing them for what they are. They're good. There's just no other way to put it. They're good. And to your point, one thing that I'd also said as well is they have 3 legit starters. And the rich irony in this is their actual ace is Charlie Morton, who's going in the next game. So, for us, the irony there too is our de facto ace, if you will, is Walker Buehler, and he's going to be going in Game 3. So, it'll be the traditional matchup, if you will. But like I've said all along, I'm a believer that in order for you to win a World Series, you have to have 3 legitimate starters. The Rays have 3 legitimate starters. I'm not saying that the Dodgers can't win this series with the setup that they currently have. This is the cards that they have been dealt, throughout the postseason, and they've made it to this point. Same with the Rays, though. The Rays, they may have their de facto ace, if you will, or they may have their traditional 3 starters. But as we saw tonight, they don't give a damn about the role. They don't give a damn about who's the starter, who's the closer, who's the setup guy, because Castillo came out for 1 out. So, again, it's a matter of who is going to get the outs for those guys. And the Dodgers just were not executing in those matchups against those guys. And granted, Blake Snell was on tonight. So, all you can do in that situation is tip your cap and try again, right? Nice try again. But when the bullpen was coming out, the bullpen has had its struggles as well. And again, credit to the Rays. They were able to keep the Dodgers to 5 hits. They were able to keep the Dodgers to 4 walks. And they were able to limit the damage, if you will, and not let a full rally come back. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what's expected, if you will, of a bullpen because again, all things considered, Blake Snell only went 4.2 innings. So, if a guy is going that short amount of time, as we've talked about with the Dodgers not giving the starters, that is, not giving the consumption of the innings, if you will, then that should almost, in a sense, be a burden to them. But if anything, tonight it helped them out because they were able to still stay efficient, and that's huge going into now it's a split as far as the series go. Now I'm not gonna ring alarm bells or anything like that because we both predicted a long series. I just think the ultimate outcome is everyone's going to do their chess move, if you will. It's just a matter, I think, of who ends up executing the better chess move that's going to win the series. And as far as today goes, the Rays handled it great. Where the downside is Tony Gonsolin did not have a good start. It was shaky at best. He on 29 pitches, half of them were for strikes. So I mean that's not terrible. 16 of them actually were strikes. Not terrible. Still quality. But the problem was he just wasn't able to execute the pitches that he wanted to. And here we are, on the losing end of that outing. And like I said, as far as Dustin goes, my whole thing is I never advocated him as a closer for a reason, just because he doesn't have the experience. Does he have the stuff? Absolutely. But another point to that is, like I've said, he's a guy that when you look at him out there on the mound, he doesn't look like he trusts his stuff. And that's something that you just can't run into in the World Series, unfortunately. It's one of those things. Maybe like during the regular season, you can try to work through that stuff and in a sense, do those quasi rehab starts where they just kind of give you some innings to sort it out. But in the World Series, it's just not the place to do that. Obviously, there's a reason why they didn't go to Kenley Jansen. And again, that's another guy that's had a similar situation, and that's a dude that just does not have the confidence in any of his stuff, and he has the stuff, right? We all see it. We've all seen it. It's just a matter of him believing that he trusts his stuff, and he's not throwing productive pitches. When you don't throw productive pitches, the outcomes are exactly what happens there. So that's the other caveat. But I'm kind of curious though, as to your thinking is. So this is the second time this postseason that they've gone into a no-hit situation, right? First time was against the Show Pods a mere 15 days ago, which feels like a really long time ago.
No.
And we've talked about how hot and cold this offense definitely can be. Obviously, we're in the World Series now. It's a different environment from that series. What concerns do you have going into this Game 3 against a Charlie Morton who has a 0.57 ERA in his previous 3 starts this postseason, who is in fact their ace, is their best pitcher, very efficient? How do you feel about this offense going into that, coming off of this loss?
Look, I'm very concerned because of Martin's breaking stuff. I don't think the Dodgers hit breaking stuff very well. I think they struggle against it. And the way they are approaching Justin Turner with the high heat, and Turner is not, he can't lay off of it, and he's struggling to hit it. I want to make sure I'm giving credit to the Rays because their reliever, Loop dominated the 3 batters that he faced. Now, I probably would have just left him to finish the game because it didn't look like anybody was going to come close to touching him. But they wanted to bring Castillo in, and that's how they operate. But, obviously, they were having a very difficult time picking up Loop. And I get it. This is the first time they're seeing him. So I'm hoping what's happening with this offense is what happened in the NLCS. They struggled at first when they first looking at these guys, but as the series progressed, they figured them out. Now, I think I just still have PTSD from what Morton did to the Dodgers in 2017, and that's what I'm expecting to happen in Game 3. So I'm worried about that, and I'm also worried about that all their runs today were scored on home runs. So that's something that's concerning.
Well, and Charlie Morton, we have to remember is that, there's just no other way to put it. That dude's a bad dude. He's good. He has solid breaking stuff. I would, I definitely would put him in that upper echelon of pitchers in the American League as far as stuff, right? He is, in fact, the race. He's good. And obviously, we all know what happened in 17. So, but what I'm concerned with is, kind of to backtrack a little bit, is to Justin Turner, to your point. There was maybe like 2 or 3 balls that he fouled off that were legit balls that probably would have been called balls that he fouled off that he was swinging at, and in that at bat there against Snell. And it's one of those things where it's like Justin Turner is too good of a hitter to be doing that, and it's those little mistakes that those Rays are gonna ride in those situations, because ultimately that dude ended up striking out. That they're gonna ride to limit the damage, if you will. And a guy like Justin Turner, who is the epitome of a professional hitter and patient in the box, works up the count, but those guys see that sort of stuff as well on the pitcher side, where they see that they're swinging at balls and they're swinging at balls, so that's why they're going to expand the zone to force those guys to swing. Whereas the hitters themselves, the Dodgers, weren't expanding the zone. They were just swinging at bad pitches. The Rays, on the other hand, they expanded the zone and they were forcing these Dodger pitchers, in a sense, to make those mistakes to end up where we are now, right? So, the shift and all that stuff, I saw comments out there about like 4 outfielders and stuff like that. At the end of the day, if the ball gets through, it gets through, right? I mean, that's just the analytics of the shift is 100% bulletproof, if you will. Stuff's going to happen, right? I mean, we see it all the time where guys go opposite through the gap, where they hit through the gap on the right side of the field, whatever. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. But what I am worried about is that like you said, the Dodgers relied on the home run ball heavily tonight, and they weren't really able to make, of the mistakes that the Rays did make, where they walked guys, they weren't able to make anything out of it. And that's the frustrating part. I felt like those Dodger hitters were going up to the plate and were kind of like we talked about in game, I think, 5, where the Dodgers were just trying to force something to happen. And it's one of those things that if you force it, obviously you're going to make mistakes and you end up here. So I'm hopeful going into game 3 that these guys adjust, especially after seeing some of these relievers, because the thing about the Rays is their MO is they will ride those relief arms into the ground where they can. So we're gonna see them again, no doubt. But now it's just a matter of now that they've seen them, adjusting to what's coming. But with Charlie Morton though, some of these guys did face him in 17, and it's relatively the same stuff. So there will be a level of familiarity there, but it doesn't change the fact that the Dodgers have struggled against breaking balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, look, I mean, the thing is this. It's concerning because in that inning when Seager led off with the home run and then Justin Turner hit that bloop double, you had a runner on second base with no outs. And the inning ended with Turner on second. Muncy hit a fly ball that didn't advance him. Will Smith hit a rocket. Unfortunately, it was right at Wendell. So that's just tough luck. But plays like that in the postseason are just going to be magnified. Our inability to do the little things to move runners can cost us a game. I mean, again, it almost feels to me, and like I said, I don't want to sell the Rays short because I think the Rays, they just beat us today. But it almost feels like the Dodgers beat themselves today. Because that double play ball, and Roger called it out immediately when he saw it, that double play ball that Kike booted, and it resulted in only getting a force out at second, that was a big play. You end up turning a double play there. Not only do you get out of that inning and limit the damage, and it's only a 2-run lead at that point, but Dustin May doesn't come in the middle of that inning. Maybe Dustin May pitches better, starting in the beginning of an inning, coming in at the beginning of an inning. It's just, it just feels to me like the Dodgers beat themselves, that it was a sloppy game. And what I'm concerned about is the series is now 1-1, and you have a pivotal game 3 coming, and you're facing a guy like Charlie Morton.
Well, and we talked about it too in our previous show. The other thing we were a little worried about going into the series is the Dodgers getting a little too cute, if you will, with their managerial decisions. And I think tonight might have been, kind of their own outdoing, if you will, by going, to the bullpen the way they did. Granted, they were forced to because Tony Gonsolin was struggling, right? But, Floro kind of bounced back from that ugly outing. I think, we talked about it last night. They felt like it was rushed to get him out there a little bit. And Victor Gonzalez, all things considered, he earned that run and gave up that walk. But it was definitely a little better than last night. He's definitely locating the ball better. He didn't seem like he was kind of a deer in the headlights, if you will. He wasn't thrown out in a situation. Obviously, we ran into the Dustin May situation. Joe Kelly, got another run there, and Wood with the clean inning, or clean 2 innings really, aside from the one walk. And Jake McGee came out and had himself a solid outing as well. So I mean, that was, if there's a positive to take away, is seeing the bulk of the bullpen guys aside from May and Kelly give up those runs. All in all, they were able to limit the damage, because truthfully, the Rays could have definitely scored more runs and manufactured more runs given on some of the mistakes that those guys were making. So that was good to see as far as that end of it goes. But it's just super unfortunate that Tony goes out in the short, fashion that he did, just because of the hype, if you will, kind of behind him and Dustin being kind of that formidable duo that they've kind of been, wanting to make work in a bullpen game. So I am glad to see that they are announcing Julio as the Game 4 starter and going kind of in that traditional sense. But looking ahead to Game 3, we know the Walker Buehler blister thing, his blister gate is going to come up, and it works out that he has that extra day of rest, in between. Because remember, there's no game tomorrow. So if you're watching this expecting there to be a game, don't go have a sympathy beer or something, because there is no game tomorrow, day off. And I think that does play in the benefit of the Dodgers, just because I feel like they were playing a little tired as well today. In part because obviously they had the least amount of rest between the two teams technically, just because the Rays had the one travel day, and they've also just been gassed as far as the pitching goes. So I'm curious to hear your take if you think that day of rest tomorrow will benefit the Dodgers more than it will the Rays.
I honestly, I think they need the rest. Will it benefit? I don't think it will. I mean, I think the issue that we're going to be running up against is how are they going to manufacture runs against Morton if no one's getting on base? I mean, there's really not that much to break down in this game tonight, because Snell was just so dominant in those first 5 innings, and so again, it's like, what happens, if you're not getting, how do you force the issue? How do you get on base when the guy is just working both sides of the plate? I mean, he had a 96 mile per hour fastball, and then he's throwing you that breaking stuff. I mean, I get it. I get why they struggled. But now they're going to see a guy on Morton who's got an ERA of less than 1, and it's a pivotal Game 3. So I know what you're saying. It almost feels like there was a lack of energy out there tonight. It felt like, okay, because we're going to the bullpen, and I get it. It was out of necessity, right? Because you didn't have a legit starter that you could throw out there. But it did feel almost like, well, we got a game in our back pocket. If we win this, great. If not, we got Buehler coming back. But the only thing about that mentality that really makes me nervous is you're one injury away from your pitching staff being completely in shambles. And that is, if something happens to Buehler in Game 3, if that blister starts acting up really early and he only gives you 2 innings, what are you going to do? Because that Tampa Bay lineup looked like a completely different lineup against our bullpen than they did against Kershaw. So I'm hoping that Buehler comes out strong, and hopefully that'll motivate. There was a stat out there, though. I think you're the one who sent it, the one about when the Rays score first. What's the figures on that?
Let me pull it up real quick. It was... Sorry, I have to get through Roger's pain. And for those of you who don't know who Roger is, that's our voice in the sky. The Rays are an MLB best 31-17 when scoring first this season, including the playoffs. So I mean, they're not slouches. We've talked about this. They're not overhyped. They're not, granted, we've said this statement here many times. Some of those stats that they have are a little deceiving, and that again, they're good, and tonight was proof of that. And another kind of preposterous stat as well for these Rays: Blake Snell is the 3rd pitcher in MLB history with 2 strikeouts in 4 consecutive innings within a single World Series game, and the other 2 pitchers, ironically, Sandy Koufax and Bob Gibson.
Yeah, and that's why, again, I mean, you got to tip your hat. The Dodgers are not out there playing against themselves, okay? The Rays, again, are there for a reason. The reason why the Dodgers offense struggled today is because of the Rays. You know, it wasn't like the Dodgers were they were just getting beat at the plate. So I know that Dodger fan is so eager to be able to blame somebody. And it's also, guys, it's game two. You got to slow down here. All right. The series is 1-1. I feel like I'm seeing Dodger fans just grip, and I get it. I get that panic because it's been 8 years, that we have nothing to show for it, because it's been 32 years, because game one felt so great. It felt so dominant. And maybe we fell for the hype that everybody was talking about, saying, oh, this series is going to be, a wash. And now we got a hard dose of reality tonight, which is something that I think this is how we expected the series was going to be, where the Rays aren't going to be a pushover because of their pitching.
Well, and let's not forget, Blake Snell is the 2018 Cy Young Award winner. So he's no slouch either. I mean, he's got great stuff. He's got electric stuff. And looking ahead to Walker Buehler, his last outing was 6 innings, 7 hits, no earned runs, and 6 Ks and no walks on 89 pitches. So, I mean, Walker himself is no slouch. And I would expect that, kind of after tonight, he'd be a little fired up because he is ultra competitive himself. And that's kind of the outing that I'm expecting, if you will, as long as the blister holds up, of course, to kind of get these Dodgers over this hump. Because again, Game 3 for the most part in the World Series has always been a pretty pivotal game. And if the Dodgers can steal that game, because at this point it's going to be a matter of who steals. And because let's also not forget, we're talking about how the Dodgers beat themselves, and they for sure did. There's no doubt about it. But also, again, tip of the cap to the Rays, they went out and executed. The Dodgers were only 2 away from tying this up, and they had an opportunity to do it, but they also made mistakes while making the Rays make mistakes. So, there is the opportunity for that redemption, if you will, going into this Game 3. And obviously, when you a huge confidence booster for guys are when they know that a certain guy is going, it just kind of amps everybody up and it gets it going. The Kershaw effect, the Walker Buehler effect, and now that we know that Urias is not going to be used in the bullpen in the next game, it's going to be interesting to see who they decide to go with as well after Walker Buehler. Because as you saw, when they went Walker and they went, to the bullpen as far as who they had been using, it was very effective. But now that we know that's not going to happen, I'm kind of curious to see how the Dodgers decide to go as far as, who's going to go where. And I mean, at this point, if Dustin's going to keep making those same mistakes and obviously not trust this stuff, I don't think that you can put him in those situations like that where they're close, where it could potentially, kind of either break it open or make mistakes to break it open even more. And then now we're talking, a hemorrhaging loss, if you will. Tony Gonsolin, I'm a little concerned if I'm honest with you. I think a huge thing with that dude is, he threw 29 pitches. He didn't look gassed. He looked a little lost out there. And all things considered, he gives up that home run to Lau, and that kind of gets in your head a little bit, right? He's a young kid in his first World Series, and he maybe he might have been caught up in the moment a little bit, whatever, right? It's over, we move on. But what I'm concerned with is the long layoff that he had from the end of the regular season to when he made his first appearance. I'm starting to feel like, as a former pitcher myself, that because I do believe that too much rest is a bad thing. And he might be a victim of that, where he got too much. And he's kind of trying to kind of get everything going. The juice is flowing in a real game situation, and here we are. So moving forward, how do you think they should use Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May, if at all?
Well, I agree with you in the sense, I think now after tonight, you're going to have to be hesitant. And that's why, I thought it was huge that Alex Wood gave him the 2 innings that he gave them tonight, And now you might, because, all right, as long as we can avoid losing the next 3, you're looking at a situation in Game 6 that might have to be another bullpen game. It's going to be another game where you're going to have to piece things together, okay? Now, Alex Wood, I was surprised. He actually pitched pretty well. Now, being that Alex Wood is a starter, maybe you're going to have to now lean on Alex Wood a little more. I mean, he pitched well in the 2017 World Series, so, I mean, at this point, I think you might have to look at Alex Wood as being a viable option only because he hasn't pitched that much in the postseason, and being that he is a starter, you might be able to stretch him out and maybe give you 3 or 4 innings, as long as he can, keep the Rays in check offensively. So I think after tonight, it's just created more question marks. It's created a sense now of urgency that we can't take anything for granted. Like I said, I mean, you got Buehler, Urias, and Kershaw going in the next 3 games. I think any Dodger fan would love that based on how they've been pitching this postseason. But again, anything could go left really quickly. Not only do you have Buehler's, blisters issues, you don't know about Kershaw's back. That thing could act up out of nowhere. So you lose Kershaw, you lose Buehler, you're in a world of pain right now from game 1 when everything looks so great. So I would think now that you're going to have to, I mean, like I said, Alex Wood going 2 innings today I think was huge because we still haven't seen Blake Treinen in the series. We haven't seen Gratterall. We haven't seen Jansen. You have a day off tomorrow. So those guys, you can go ahead and maybe ride them a little more, either in game 3 or game 4 if you need them.
And Alex Wood's final line was two innings, 26 pitches. Ironically, of those 26, 24 were strikes. So he had himself a hell of an outing. And, and I feel like he's kind of on a redemption tour, if you will, just because he came here and he was talking about how he only signed here because he knew that they promised him essentially that he would be in the rotation. He ran into those injury woes. Here we are now where he's in the bullpen. And again, he has started in the past and he's come out of the pen. So he's familiar with both, which is good, especially in a series like this. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if they just kind of, hey, we're going to have you go. Because Tony obviously knew for a couple of days that he was going to go tonight. That, Dave Roberts just kept that close to the vest for gamesmanship, whatever. And here we are. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did something like that with Wood. If he keeps that up, if they did another bullpen game like we talked about, he would be a solid, opener, a second guy to go to, kind of like how they did with Gonsolin and Floro today. It's just unfortunate for Gonsolin that he was kind of on the bad end of the stick, if you will, with his outing, giving up that home run to Lau. But again, all the credit to the Rays, though. I mean, the Rays came out and they came out fired up after last night, because, last night they essentially they were quiet. They were shut down. They were not playing how the Rays had previously played. And they tend to be a little louder in the beginning of the innings. And here we are. And again, but, all the credit as well to the Dodgers because they came back. Granted, it was a little too late as far as getting that rally going. Your boy / MVP pick, Will Smith, going out there and hitting that bomb. And, just kind of going out there and getting it going. So if there's another positive going into game 3, it was good to see Corey Seager hit that home run. It was good to see that offense kind of get something going there at the end. CT3 getting it going too. And again, there was the concerns with Chris about the ankle. I don't think there's any concerns anymore because he's going out there and just kind of doing it all. So all in all, good to see on that end. I was hoping that we would see a little more manufacturing, if you will, from Cody, especially because he's kind of a little hot right now. He was able to get the one walk, but unfortunately, this Rays pitching staff is just legit. Again, they're evenly matched, and we have to, remember as a fan base that these Rays are here for a reason. They beat the Astros, who also came back on their adverse, trail to get to this World Series. So, it's going to be a fun series. It's going to be a long series. And again, you and I predicted close games. This was a close one. It's one of those classic games, if you will. Just the caveat is the Dodgers really did beat themselves tonight.
Yeah, you're going to have one of these games. I think, yes, as every Dodger fan, they want a sweep. They want, we don't want any stress. To your point, I was encouraged that they made a game out of this because, during those first 5 innings, it just seemed like it wasn't their night. I think Bellinger was having a really hard time picking up the ball, at the plate. So it's just things can change so quickly. Yesterday, we were just on such a high thinking, hey, this is it. This is our time. This is it. And now all of a sudden, it's just someone poured a bucket of cold water on us and just brought the harsh reality that, hey, these guys are for real. Now, that being said, they did at least touch up for a couple of runs their top relievers. Castillo only faced one batter, but so as the series progresses, maybe I'm not that afraid of the bullpen. It was just like I said, unfortunately, that inning, I think is just gonna. What if Kike would have been able to turn that double play? You get out of there. It's a 2-0 game. And those are the things you can't give opportunities to that, especially to teams who struggle to score runs.
Well, and again, we talked about this in our previous show as well, is mitigating mistakes. And mistakes in the World Series are just, something that you can't necessarily make. Obviously, you're not going to play a perfect game. That's impossible. But, anywhere you can mitigate mistakes is going to be key. And tonight, the Rays were a beneficiary of a mistake. And Kike, who's pretty sound defensively, it's just one of those things where, the transfer of the ball, it happens. Corey Seager had that issue. Justin Turner had that issue. Like I said, it felt like everyone was playing off, and Snell dominated, and the Dodgers, bats just woke up a little too late, and a day off, honestly, I think will do both teams some good, and it'll be nice to see Buehler on full rest on Friday, just because again we talked about the rest factor going into everything as far as that goes, and I mean I don't think that the no hitter through the fourth and 4 1/3 was a mental, thing that the Dodgers were affected by. It ended up ironically happening almost the same way as it did against the Padres, where they started waking up in the fifth. So,
right.
All things considered, there is some positive to take away. Dave Roberts also said tonight on the post-game show, quote, "We feel great. We've got Walker going. We've got Julio going, and then we've got Clayton." So, end quote. So, I mean, that's kind of the mentality that they're taking. And we've talked about this, the fans themselves and the alarm bells, but the players, they did it in the NLCS. They were still really chill. All things considered, with how everything went, they were still able to get the pennant and get here. So I don't think they're necessarily worried. I'm just kind of curious to see what my concern is how the bullpen is used moving forward.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think they're in a good place because of the fact that their high leverage guys have not seen time in the series. And you have a day off tomorrow, so they should be very well rested for these next 2 games. So if you need to go to these guys and these guys need to give you innings, then, you do it. So they're in a good position. I just think the issue is going to be game 3, you're facing Morton. And being that the Rays are going to have a day off, if Morton can give them any type of length, I think you're going to see the same thing that you saw today. They'll get Morton for maybe 5-6 innings, and then they're going to go to their heavy hitters. And that's why I think it's important to get to these Rays starters like the Dodgers did in game 1. Today, they just couldn't do it. Blake Snell just really mowed them down, and you just got to tip your hat to that. But I think it is important to get to these Rays starters so you can then start lengthening that bullpen of theirs. And as we're starting to get, further into this series, I like the Dodgers' chances the more that they see these guys.
Well, and another point of positivity to kind of wrap this up with, the Dodgers were down 5-0 when Chris Taylor hit that home run. So again, being down with that big of a deficit, most teams would have a hard time kind of overcoming that deficit, if you will. And the Dodgers got within 2, even though they ended up scoring that additional run. So all things considered, they did get everything going to a certain degree. It was just too late, and that's just a part of the game. You just like you said, have to tip your cap to them because Snell went out and did his job, and here we are, right? As we look ahead to Game 3, who are you expecting to be your player of the game for Game 3?
For me, it's got to be Buehler. I think Buehler has to come up huge. I think he has to give them at least some sort of length, not necessarily, to the 7th inning or so, but if he can give a performance like he gave in Game 6 of the NLCS and really shut down this Rays offense, I think that would be huge for the Dodgers, because if we see the Rays start scoring early in Game 3 again, that might be a disturbing trend. You might start seeing that these guys are getting confidence now because they are starting to score runs. They scored 6, tonight. So, if Bueller can keep these guys in check, I feel good about what's going on Game 3.
So I'm going to go Corey Seager just because he's been warming up again, and obviously he had the slump there, if you will, of 2 games, but here we are now, and he got 2 hits tonight, got the 1 run, and only struck out once in 4 at bats. That was the best outing of everyone today. But I'm going Seager just because you can definitely tell he's seeing the ball well. He's going out there and being patient, and I think if he can kind of keep that trend going, then everyone else will see that and keep it going. And then and likewise, if they can give Walker a lead going into this, because let's not forget they're the visitors this next go around.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I'm going Corey Seager, because obviously they're going to be up first, they're going to get the thing going, and if they can give Walker that lead going into his appearance there, I think that's going to be huge and it's going to be pivotal because we saw what it did last night with the Dodgers having Kershaw going. They gave him that lead and Kershaw was on, right? So I think if they can replicate that, I think we'll be good to go, and they can steal Game 3. It'll still be close, like we've talked, but all things considered, if Walker can go out and get these guys, pretty contained, because again, it's funny. We talked about this with the Braves, how certain relievers, the lower half of the lineup, the Dodgers were able to have success on them. They were able to contain them. This Rays lineup, top to bottom, has got some hitters. The only caveat is just no one knows who they are outside of the American League. So, again, you just have to tip your cap and you have to be able to contain them and not let them capitalize on your mistakes. But again, we will see how it all pans out on a stress-filled Game 3 on Friday. Again, not tomorrow, Friday, because we've gotten so accustomed to baseball every single day that we have to remember that these guys are getting a day off, and a much-deserved day off, if I'm honest, because of how they've grinded it out over the last 16 or so days. So as far as that goes, we're going to wrap this guy up. As from the voice in the sky, Roger, myself, Alonso, and Juan, we thank you for joining us. As always, our Twitter handles are at the bottom if you want to follow us, shoot us any messages, ask us any questions. We're pretty active on the Twitterverse. And again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is just Dodgers Beat Official. And again, stay safe. If you got to go outside, please wear your mask, socially distance, stay healthy. But until then, we will see you on Friday. Be safe. We'll talk to you then.